Welcome to Reframing the Membrane, Crossing Boundaries, where we advocate for actionable solutions for improving overall mental health and wellness by examining the challenges and resources affecting people and access to care. Each episode takes listeners through lived experiences and evidence-based research, providing practical strategies to build resilience and advocate for mind, body, and spirit well-being. Thank you for joining us as we engage with the community, health professionals, advocates, and individuals sharing their experiences. Before we get started, the content of this production may be emotionally challenging. The production will aim to inform you in advance when potentially activating material will be filmed or discussed. Let's get started.
Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Capri. Lately, we've talked a lot about trauma and generational trauma. We've talked about PTSD. We've also talked about coping skills and emotional regulation and some ways in which you can practice resilience and mindfulness. And one of the areas that is closely related to overall health and wellness is sleep. And so I've been facilitating group sessions over the last several weeks. And recently, we had a very large group that wanted to learn more about what they can do to improve their sleep and what happens to the body and the overall nervous system when we're not getting the proper rest that we need to be well. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time with you to answer some of the questions that I received from you and from the group around sleep hygiene, what it is, why it's important, and also what are some of the common reasons that people may not get enough sleep and what might you do about that, plus some easy, quick, practical tips that you might employ so that you can rest and rest well. So let's dive in. So what do we mean by sleep hygiene? What we're referring to is the sleep environment or behavior that you might employ when you're getting ready for bed. Poor sleep hygiene can negatively impact sleep quantity and quality, so we'll get into what does that even look like? And good sleep hygiene includes really getting into a rhythm, having a strict schedule so that you follow a routine at bedtime, you form some healthy habits. You might even turn your bedroom into a sanctuary, as one of the participants in the group shared with us. And then alone, it's important to understand that healthy sleeping habits and overall sleep hygiene doesn't cure all sleep problems. And so we'll talk a little bit about some of the disorders and common reasons that keep folks up at night. But what I want you to take away is that having an environment that's consistent, that's uninterrupted, can help to facilitate a better good night's sleep. If you think about what you need to have a very strong and positive physical and mental health mindset, to be able to have a better quality of life and to improve productivity, you need to get some sleep. And it doesn't matter if you're a child, if you're mid-age, if you're an older adult, every one of us benefits from having sleep. We need it so that our bodies can recharge for a variety of reasons. It also gives us time to really restore, refresh, and rejuvenate, and it plays a part in achieving those goals. And so research has told us that forming these good, healthy habits are a central part to health and wellness. And so we want to have some beneficial routines that can help us to really get into the rhythm and the beat of creating a positive reinforcement in a process that aids us as we're looking to kind of get away from some of the bad habits that we may have around going to bed. And so to do this, there are a few things that we want to do in our environment that can help us to reach some of these goals. But before we get into, well, what do we do? What kind of things can we kind of check off of our list as we're preparing for bed? I want you to know that there is a number of serious reasons as to why people may receive insufficient sleep. And insomnia is one of the top reasons. And we'll talk a little bit more about what insomnia is. So if you're having a hard time falling asleep, it could be a frequent disturbance. You may have some daytime sleepiness. These are some telltale signs of poor sleep hygiene and also indicates a lack of consistency when you're trying to get some sleep. So that could be indicative of poor sleep hygiene, whereas good sleep hygiene is really about getting yourself in the best position in the best environment so that you can sleep well each and every night. So you want to think about how can you set a schedule, have a pre-bed routine. Maybe you have a routine that is going to be feeling a little more holistic and automatic for you. So you might want to create some pleasantries in your bedroom. As I mentioned, I had a client last week that said she's turned her bedroom into a sanctuary of sorts. And so it's a very inviting, warm place. When you come into the space, you're coming in there to prepare yourself for bed. And it's recommended that you really use your bedroom for a couple of things. One, your bed is mostly used for sleep, but let's acknowledge that sex is another great reason to use the bed. But beyond sleep and sex, you want to protect that sacred space so that you can really get in bed and signal to your body that it's time to shut down, it's time to wind down, it's time to get some rest and relaxation. If you have a multitude of devices and blue lights and lights in general and TVs and all of these things that are kind of really getting in the way, they're distracting your ability to get to sleep. These can create problems and contribute to poor sleep environments. So you want to minimize, if not eliminate, those things from your space. So, how much sleep do you need? It varies, right? Everyone operates off of a different amount of sleep. But what I'll tell you is that over time, and as we age, many of us are getting less and less and less sleep. So when we arrive here as newborns, we need lots of sleep to grow and to develop. And so newborns are generally getting somewhere between 14 to maybe 19 hours of sleep. And that's what they need. And then as you continue to grow, you're getting a little bit lesser and lesser and lesser. And so by the time you reach adulthood, it's recommended that you're getting somewhere between 7 or 9 hours of sleep. Many of us might be getting somewhere between 2 and 4, which is very unhealthy. And I will be the first to admit that I don't always get enough sleep. And that is something that I am religiously working toward improving to get consistent sleep every night. So, if you're an adult, you want to aim to get a good 7 to 9 hours of sleep if you can. And one of the ways in which you might consider doing that is to have a time that is your time for wake up. So it doesn't matter if it's the weekday or the weekend. Try to get yourself in the habit of getting up at the same time so your schedule is not fluctuating so much, so that you're getting into this rhythm and this habit of getting consistent sleep. And it's very important that you prioritize your sleep. So you might think, oh, I'm going to sleep in. I'm going to study. Maybe you're going to exercise or you're going to do anything but prioritize your sleep. It's really important to make sure that sleep is a priority. You need to calculate your bedtime so that you can know that you're going to get around the same amount of sleep each night. And then you can make some adjustments as you need to. It's okay to shift your sleep times. We're going to have things that come up, and we're not always going to be able to get to sleep at the same time, but really strive for a routine and some consistency and make small steps and adjustments toward that so that you can settle into your schedule. And be mindful of naps. I am a notorious napper. Not so much these days, but historically, naps are my best friend. And naps can be a great way to get some of your energy back during the day, but they also throw off your sleep patterns when it's time to go to bed at night. So if you need to take a nap, try to make sure that it's as short as possible and that it's very early in the day because you don't want to inhibit your ability to get to sleep when it's time for your night routine. You want to be consistent. Again, get yourself together. If it's brushing your teeth, if it's taking your bath, your shower, whatever it is that you're doing to prepare yourself for bed, maybe you're putting on your PJs, maybe you're going to sleep naked, whatever is your jam, get that routine going so that you can prepare to be in the bed and start your wind down time. And so you want to take advantage of whatever it is that you need to do to kind of get yourself in that state of calmness. Maybe you're listening to some meditation, some sound meditation, some soft music. I like to listen to some jazz, maybe do a little bit of stretching. Reading always helps. And of course, there's a number of relaxation exercises that you could try, whether it is doing some body scanning or sensory techniques, or if it's grounding with your breath work, I'll put some of those techniques and tips in the show notes, and you can try and see which ones might resonate the best with you. It's also important to dim your lights. So, we want to turn down the lights. We want to make sure that we're not creating any interference with our melatonin, which is a hormone that helps to create and facilitate sleep. And so, when you have the lights dim, it really starts to get the production of that hormone going to help you kind of transition into a restful night's sleep. It's hard. I know it's hard to, in this kind of constant, always on society that many of us are in, to turn off the electronics, but you really want to go device free. I suggest an hour before bed. If possible, you should be turning off your tablets, your phones, whatever stimulation that you have from a device. This includes your televisions. Get that turned off, get those blue lights out of here. And this way you can avoid the interference with your melatonin production, but it also just gets your mind focusing on more of a meditative state and a transition into relaxation. Again, when you're thinking about falling asleep and you truly want to get to sleep quickly, meditation, mindfulness, paced breathing, which if you're new to the podcast, you can go back and listen to some of the other episodes where I'm teaching you how to do the paced breathing, some other breathing techniques, as well as how to start to incorporate meditation and mindfulness into your day. These are techniques that are very easy and quick to do, and they can get you in the right mind and in the right mood for bed. Now, if you toss and turn, that can be problematic. There is a connection between associating bed with sleep. So that's why it's often recommended that you use your bed for sleep, because the association is once you get into bed, your body knows what it's to do. It's time to go to sleep. And so if you're in the bed and you haven't gotten to sleep in 20 or 30 minutes or so, it's recommended that you get up, you move around, maybe you stretch, you read something, or you do something else that can kind of calm you down, but try to stay in that low light so that you can fall asleep again. There's some healthy habits that you want to incorporate also into your routine, because you really want to support your circadian rhythm. Do you all know what that is? If you don't, this is your 24-hour cycle that's part of your body's internal clock. So if you think about the 24-hour day, a lot of times it's broken up into 8-hour increments. And so you might spend 8 hours at work, then you hear that you need to get 8 hours of sleep, and then you need to spend another 8 hours doing whatever it is that you're doing. And so a lot of that concept and theory comes out of the notion of the circadian rhythm and the 24-hour cycle. So the body's internal clock is naturally aligned with the cycle of the day and the night. So when you're traveling, you're working, or you might have some other issue, it could be autoimmune or something else that's really disrupting your circadian rhythm. This can cause some inconsistency in your sleep schedule. So it's really important to try to maintain that to the best that you can. When it's out of balance, it can affect your mental state and it can affect your behavior, okay? So it's important to try to understand your sleep wake cycle so that you know how sleepy or alert you might feel throughout the day. And we can talk more about this if it's something that's of interest to you, but I just wanted to touch on it briefly to make sure that you understand how some of the sleep disruptions are interconnected with our natural rhythm in our body, okay? So, daylight exposure to the sun is really important. So, to the best that you can, try to get some good daylight exposure throughout your day. You want to also exercise regularly. Just try to be physically active throughout the day. So, we're sitting down a lot, and to the extent that we can get active, that can also help it to be a little bit easier getting to sleep at night. Of course, we're talking about healthy sleeping habits, so you don't want to be smoking. Nicotine actually stimulates the body in ways that disrupt sleep, and not just nicotine, there's some other things that you might smoke that could also disrupt your sleep. So you want to not smoke to the extent that you can not have that habit. You also want to reduce alcohol consumption. Alcohol might make it easier to fall asleep, but then it wears off, and so it ends up disrupting your sleep a little bit later in the night. And that's something that you really would want to avoid late in the evening, in addition to cutting down or cutting out your caffeine. So, when you're having caffeine in the afternoon, which I'm guilty of, I'm an afternoon coffee drinker. And then when you have it in the evening, caffeine, it's a stimulant. So, it can keep you wired, whether you realize it or not. And so when you're ready to rest, it can be problematic. So you want to be aware of your consumption throughout the day and the timing of it. Also, when you eat too late, especially if you're eating something heavy, that's big, that's greasy, and even spices for some people could cause you to have some digestion issues when it's time to go to bed. So you want to try to avoid that and keep things a little light when you're getting close to kind of winding down and getting in the bed. And then again, we've talked about restricting your bed activities. So you want to create this link that when your mind is ready for sleep and when you get in the bed, the association between the bed and the mind and the sleep connection is that it's time for bed. So use your bed for sleep, and then sex is the one exception, right? And hopefully that's something that's also great for you. And then you can go to sleep after. All right, so we're optimizing our space. Again, we talked about having this sanctuary. You want to have a comfortable bed if you can, comfortable mattress, comfortable pillows. You want to have nice sheets that are really helping you to get in touch with yourself, to really support that sense of calm and to contribute to that sanctuary in a way that's going to help you to relax and feel comfy. Also, the temperature is important. And so they say that you should really keep your room around 65 degrees Fahrenheit, but to each his own. The cooler you can keep it, the better. If you're having fluctuations in your hormones, or maybe someone likes it hot, you like it cold, you got to find that happy balance. But when you keep the room at a cool, comfortable temperature, it usually helps you with your sleep as well. We're going to block out the light. We want to black out everything so that we can prevent the light that's coming in from interrupting our sleep. And to the extent that you can drown out noise, you want to do that as well. So there's some people that maybe your partner is a snorer and you can't get to sleep because they're snoring too loud. This is a very realistic and simple issue that many people have that interfere and creates unhealthy sleep habits. So there are some other things that you can do to try to drown that out, and earplugs is a simple suggestion. You can also try white noise machines or fanned. Those are, I was apparently born with the fan, and have all my life have slept with a fan. So I'm used to having white noise, and I just giggle because it's definitely a trait that I picked up from my mom. There's also aromatherapy, calming scents. So you might try a scent such as lavender. This can help to induce a calmer state of mind. It can also help to cultivate that space for great sleep. And so, these concepts are very basic, practical things that you can try, but they don't work for everyone, but many of them do. And they're healthy sleep habits that really vary from person to person. So, if you're having trouble sleeping, it's good to try to figure out what it is that may be causing some of those sleep problems so that you can assess and then determine, what do you need to do so that you can sleep better. I mentioned at the start of this conversation that people have many sleep disorders, and sometimes those get in the way of our ability to sleep. And so we've got some physiological or psychological issues that may be impairing our ability to get to sleep and to sleep well, or we get to sleep and we can't stay asleep. And so sometimes it might be that we're awake in the middle of the night, There's some interference with our schedule. There could be some unusual behaviors that are causing us to have some issues with sleeping. And so we want to be mindful of those as well. I said insomnia earlier, and insomnia, is simply put, is just the inability or difficulty to fall to sleep and stay asleep, even though you want to go to sleep. And people who suffer from insomnia may also experience daytime sleepiness. They may also have a difficulty functioning while they're awake. And so this requires a diagnosis. If this is happening to you more than 3 or 4 times a week for at least 3 months, you want to speak to a medical professional. And you could get a sleep study, and there's also medication that may be offered to help aid your sleep. Research is telling us that insomnia is more likely to occur with older age and lower socioeconomic status, or paired with anxiety or depression. There's some therapy, CBT and DBT are some therapeutic modalities that can help you to reframe and restructure some of your thought patterns if that's an issue, to help you get to sleep. And there are some other approaches that you could work with your therapist or mental health professional to help resolve some of those symptoms. So, as I mentioned, there are a number of sleep disorders that may interfere with our ability to get to sleep and stay to sleep. There are 10 that are considered the top 10, and they include insomnia, obstructive sleep apnea, snoring, sleep hypoventilation, restless leg syndrome, REM behavior disorder, narcolepsy, sleep talking or sleepwalking, night terrors and nightmares, and bruxism. And bruxism is one that you don't hear about often, but it's actually quite common, and it involves people grinding their teeth during their sleep. And if it's not treated, it can cause damage to not only your teeth, but sometimes your jaw. I actually used to do this in my sleep, and we never did figure out why, but for about 2 years, I was grinding my teeth, and I was also having nightmares. And so the dentist made a bite guard for me, and I used to wake up and I'd have like the inside of my jaw was like raw from where I had been biting down on it. And so I was waking up not really understanding why my jaw was just suddenly like sore and bruised on the inside. And then one day I um, woke my husband up, and he was like, "Hey, you're grinding your teeth in your sleep." And that's how we came to realize that this was an issue. And then all of a sudden it just stopped. And so it's really important to make sure that you get checked out if that's an issue for you, or if you notice that you're grinding your teeth, or your teeth feel a little bit different or worn down, or something's going on with your jaw when you wake up. The bite guards can definitely help to protect your teeth, but it's also worth exploring to understand what the root cause might be as to why you're experiencing that in the first place. So we talked about insomnia. Sometimes this can be brought on by an illness. Sometimes it could be because we're upset, maybe we're stressed out. There's a variety of reasons that this could happen. There isn't really one concrete reason. But when you adopt good sleep habits and healthy sleep habits, it can help, but it doesn't always cure. So when you have a lot of complexities that are at play there, you really need to seek professional help to understand what may be the driver as to why you're having insomnia. And this is where I had mentioned CBT, so cognitive behavior therapy, is really helpful in helping with sleep disorders as related to insomnia and some others. There are also a number of medications that can be prescribed, and there's some holistic things as well. So in the group that I was working on that I mentioned earlier, one of the participants indicated that she uses magnesium oil and that she puts it on her feet every night, and that she's able to get to sleep and stay asleep and get a lot of rest in that way. And that's a natural remedy that she has found. I also would recommend Dr. Bach's flower remedies. They actually have a sleep remedy that has worked very well, not only for myself, but others that I know who have tried holistic alternatives to try to get more sleep. We talked a bit about snoring. This is a very common problem. Over 40% of men and over 20% of women snore on a regular basis. And this can worsen with age and weight gain. And so this also can disturb your partner's sleep. And when that happens, there's usually a heightened level of stress that's happening to both people because now neither person is getting any sleep. But what is important to know about snoring is that many times, people who are snoring also have obstructive sleep apnea. And what that means is that you're having difficulty breathing freely. It can happen over time, but it's usually caused by like a narrowness in the throat. And so you can get tested and you can participate in a sleep study. You can wear a CPAP machine to determine if you're having trouble breathing. And this is something that is really, really important because not only does it disrupt your sleep, but it causes tiredness throughout the day. And there are a number of treatments that can help you, anywhere from losing some weight, cutting down on alcohol or drugs. There's some dental devices. And then there's the CPAP machine, which is a continuous positive airway pressure therapy, which is essentially giving you additional oxygen while you're sleeping. There is a new FDA approved implant. One of the participants at the group actually had this installed and actually showed us where they placed it. And interestingly enough, it wasn't working well for her because it does require you to take an action. So apparently, it comes with a device and you have to turn it on and off when you're ready to go to sleep. And so, if you're a person that can't remember that, you need to turn the device on. She stated that the device then wasn't working. And so, if you're going to get a device implanted into your body, make sure that you have the ability to take those steps every night to remember to turn it on and to follow the instructions that are needed. Otherwise, it's not going to be very beneficial. So, other common disorders. There are times when the muscles that we use to breathe need to be told to do so by our brains. And so when we're asleep, there's a less of a drive for this to happen. So if your breathing muscles are weakened, if you've got an excessive load, or if you've got some lung disorder or obesity where you're not able to breathe strongly enough during sleep, this is what is referred to as sleep hypoventilation. And without treatment, this can actually lead to heart failure and other breathing problems. Moving on, restless leg syndrome is a very common and uncomfortable condition. And this essentially is when you are unable to sleep because you're constantly having to move your legs. And so there's an uncomfortable feeling in the legs, and this is causing pain. And another one of the participants in the group had talked about how she was coping with it, and it was actually getting worse. So sometimes the body doesn't have enough nutrients, and so you have to think about things like iron, for example. Are you getting enough nutrients? If that is the underlying factor, that can be easily resolved. And so you want to have an awareness of what could be going on so that you can kind of get to that and address the cause. And then there are medications that one can take for that as well. Narcolepsy is another disorder that's quite common, and it's essentially where people switch between being awake and sleep, and they feel sleepier more often than they might like, and their sleep is disrupted throughout the day and really at any time. They also, people with narcolepsy also can hallucinate, and this can happen whether they are falling asleep or waking up. And so sometimes this can also tie into sleep paralysis. And that's quite scary because that sudden feeling of weakness and being in that state between half awake, half sleep can't move, it can feel very terrifying. And not today, but if you're interested, we can deep dive into the many thoughts about sleep paralysis and what it means from a spiritual perspective. A lot of people have different cultural beliefs and experiences with sleep paralysis and different theories as to why that happens. And so there's some very interesting thoughts and commentary out there. And some of it is evidence based research as well. So we can talk about that if that's something that you want to know more about. Text the show and let me know. Also, there's sleep talking, sleepwalking. As I talk through these disorders, I myself have had at least 4 on the list. So when I was a teenager, I used to sleepwalk often, and I still talk every now and then. And apparently, I can speak multiple languages in my sleep and have been known to speak in a very ancient language sometimes while I'm asleep, which has, to be fully transparent, has been quite shocking and a bit scary because I don't know what that even means or how I have an ability to do that while I'm sleeping. But it is something that has been well documented. And so one of my little fun facts. But people that are having issues with sleep talking, sleepwalking, some people are doing this and they're fully asleep. Sometimes it happens when they're partially awake, and it's very common in kids. It sometimes goes away in adults, but not all the time. And so you want to just kind of be mindful that these are different areas that can affect our ability to sleep. And these are taboo topics as well. They can be, right? Because maybe it's embarrassing to the person, or maybe it's embarrassing to your partner if you're doing this or if they're doing this. If you're the type of person that sleepwalks and you're going to get into the car and you want to drive off, this is actually a documented phenomenon. So you can look that up on your own to learn more about people who have been driving while they're actually sleepwalking, and just to get a deeper insight into what's happening when someone might be sleepwalking. And of course, all of this, has a variety of treatments that can help to reduce, if not eliminate, some of the severity of these disorders. Nightmares and night terrors are also very common, and you're not usually fully awake when you're having this. This is common in kids and adults, and they can be very, 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 have a very negative impact. They can be very disturbing for not only you, but for the person who might be around you while you're experiencing this kind of night terror. So poor sleep habits can make these things worse. And so that's why we talk about practicing healthier sleep hygiene and better sleep habits to hopefully reduce, if not avoid, that altogether. There's also a rapid eye movement disorder. This is where essentially you're in your REM sleep and this is your dream state, and it can be split into various phases. But at the point where you're having the rapid eye movement, your muscles in your eyes are active, and this can be a very violent movement. And so sometimes when that happens, this is causing a violent physical reaction. And so there could be an injury, not only to you, but to your partner. And so there are some treatments that are out there for that as well. There are a number of medications that one can take, sleeping pills that people turn to. These are really short-term solutions. You don't really want to be having to rely on medication for the rest of your life in order to get to sleep. And so medication can be used in combination with some of the other therapeutic modalities to help you to get to sleep. But there are considerable side effects that you want to be mindful of, which includes dependence. They can also be very dangerous if they're mixed with other drugs or alcohol. So you want to be mindful of what you're taking. And you also want to make sure that you're hopefully able to decrease the amount of medication that you need to get to sleep every night because you're starting to get into a ritual and a habit of healthier sleep practices. So, if this is something that is of interest to you, you should talk to your doctor about any kind of sleep medication that might be able to help you. They're very common, but again, they're also very addictive. And essentially, what they do is they help to enhance the sleep pathways in your brain to get you to sleep and to stay asleep. All right. So, a number of antidepressants also help people get to sleep. They may have an underlying mental health condition or not, but they're not recommended for people whose primary problem is insomnia. So I hope this has been helpful to give you an idea about some of the ways in which it's really important to practice better sleep hygiene. And I'll go back because some of you are texting the show asking to talk more about CBT and how that works. And so psychoeducation is really important when we're talking about these different things. Sometimes you can have a hyperarousal or a conditioned arousal, which can create some sort of association with going to sleep, which can then result or contribute to some sort of insomnia or some other chronic issue. And so it's important to be able to reframe and restructure that thinking so that you can have more of a positive association. That is at the most basic level. We can have an entire episode to talk about CBT specifically as related to sleep. But you want to essentially be working on your behaviors and your thought patterns that are restricting the sleep in the first place. And that's what the work that you could do with a therapist. But there's also some research that you can look up on your own and go through some of the other podcasts and look in the show notes for some resources to learn how to do some self help. And as you need additional support, certainly seek out professional help that can help you with relaxation training, some stress reduction techniques, but mindful breathing. I keep going back to breathing because breathing and breath work and progressive muscle relaxation techniques are all very helpful to help with the body's stress response. And generally, when we're unable to get to sleep, it's something to do with our body stress response kind of doing its thing and interfering with our ability to get some rest. And so, employing those techniques, being mindful and aware of how to do them can be really helpful. I talked a little about cognitive reframing and restructuring, and the reason that this is so important and why it's used to break the cycle of really ruminating on thoughts and beliefs that are contributing to your inability to get sleep. So, we might have an unrealistic expectation of what sleep looks like. So, we really need to make sure that we're creating a routine and a habit that is feasible and that we can stick to. So, we'll talk more about CBT, particularly as related to sleep hygiene, getting to sleep. But there are a couple of other areas that I want to mention. I had said autoimmune issues can cause some challenges with getting to sleep, as can depression, pain. People with fibromyalgia have difficulty often getting and staying asleep. PTSD, we've got a few episodes now on PTSD and trauma. You can listen to those and it will clearly connect the dots as to why that may interfere with sleep. Substance abuse is also problematic when we're talking about not only getting to sleep and staying to sleep, but just overall healthy living. Those can be that can be disruptive to that. Menopausal hot flashes are again another area that can cause difficulty when trying to get to sleep. So these are just real life, everyday matters that can interfere with our sleep patterns, and so we want to have an awareness of them so that we have some tools in order to be able to help ourselves get some better sleep. I want to give you some tips to recap what we just discussed on what you can do when you can't get to sleep and what to do instead of ruminating. All right. So when you can't sleep and what to do instead of ruminating. And these are practices that are pulled from dialectical behavior therapy, which I talk about in previous episodes. So one of the first things you want to do is you want to develop and follow a consistent sleep schedule, even on the weekends, like we talked about today. Go to bed and get up at the same time each day and avoid anything longer than a 10-minute nap during the day if you can. Do not use your bed in the daytime for things like watching TV, talking on the phone, or reading, because again, we want to make a positive association with bed and sleep. Again, avoid caffeine, nicotine, alcohol, heavy meals, and exercising late in the day before you go to sleep. When prepared to sleep, turn off the light and keep the room quiet and the temperature comfortable and relatively cool. You can try an electric blanket if you get cold, put your feet outside of the blanket, or turn on a fan directed toward your bed if you're hot. Or you could also wear a sleeping mask. You could use earplugs, and you can turn on a white noise machine or the fan if needed. Give yourself at least a half an hour and at most an hour to fall asleep. And if it doesn't work, evaluate whether you are calm or anxious, even if you're only having like a background anxiety or you're ruminating, like there's something in that underflow that is in the background that's causing some noise in your mind. You want to evaluate and observe what that is so that you can address it. You also want to remind yourself that you need rest and aim for getting to sleep. You want to get in that dreamy state. You want to rest your brain. So you want to be working on getting yourself to the idea that staying awake is not a catastrophe, but you do not decide to give up on your sleeping for the night and get up for the day. So do not decide to give up on sleeping for the night and get up for the day. So really work on, this isn't a catastrophe. You need to get the rest. You want to aim to get into that dreamlike state. Now, if you're calm but you're wide awake, get out of bed, go to another room and read a book or do some activity that is not going to wake you up further. And as you start to get tired, you get sleepy, go back to bed. You can also try a light snack such as an apple if need be. If you're anxious or you're ruminating, you want to use cold water and the tip skill. I actually teach the tip skill in the previous episode. And then get right back in bed and do the paced breathing tip skill, okay? Remember, if you have a medical condition, get medical approval before using the cold water, which is recommended in the tip skill, okay? You can also try the 9-0 meditation practice, which is where you breathe in deeply and you breathe out slowly, saying in your mind the number 9. On the next breath, say 8, then 7, and so on until you breathe out saying 0. Then start over, but this time with 8 instead of 9 as you breathe out, followed by 7, and so on until you reach 0. Next, start with 6 as you breathe out, and so on till 0. Then start with 5, then with 4, and then so on until you have gone all the way down to starting with 1. Now, if you get lost, start over with the last number that you remember. You continue to do this until you fall asleep. You can also focus on bodily sensation of the rumination. So rumination is often escape from difficult emotional sensations. You can reassure yourself that worries in the middle of the night are just middle of the night thinking, and that in the morning you will think and feel differently. Another tip is to read an emotionally engrossing novel just for a few minutes until you feel somewhat tired. Then stop reading, close your eyes, and try to continue the novel in your head. If the rumination doesn't stop, follow these guidelines. If it's solvable, solve it. If it is insolvable, go deep into the worry all the way to the catastrophe, the very worst outcome you can imagine, and then imagine coping ahead with the catastrophe. If nothing else works, with your eyes closed, it's recommended that you listen to public radio. So this could be BBC or NPR. Put it at a low volume, use your headphones if necessary. And the reason is because public radio is a good choice because of the little fluctuation in the voice tone or volume, and this can help to put you to sleep as well. So again, these are skills that are offered in training for DBT, and these are just small, quick tips that you can master to help you get to sleep. Now, I want to know from you if you have tried any of these things and if they have worked and what you did and what didn't work. Okay, so text the show and let me know. So as we wrap up and close out today's episode, I want to share with you 8 tips for success, and these are brought to you by the American Heart Association on how to get healthy sleep. Tip 1, to clean up your sleep hygiene, you need to move it. Charge your devices as far away from your bed as possible. The distance may help you feel less overwhelmed in general. Dim it. Dim your screen or use a red filter app at night. The bright blue light on most devices can mess with your circadian rhythm and your melatonin production, which we talked about already. Set it. Alarms aren't just for waking up, so set a bedtime alarm to remind you that it's time to wrap it up for the night. Lock it. If you've got a scrolling habit you need to kick, try an app blocking app that makes it impossible to get lost in after-hour emails, social media, or gaming. And then block it. Tell notifications to buzz off if they're waking you up at night. Put your phone on Do Not Disturb mode to block it all out when you're trying to sleep. And the reasons for these are to practice better, healthy sleep habits, but you also want to be aiming to get that 7 to 9 hours of sleep that I talked about. Too much or too little sleep is associated with heart disease, studies are showing. So most adults need this sleep. If not, you're at risk for cardiovascular disease, cognitive decline and dementia, depression, high blood pressure, blood sugar, and cholesterol, and obesity. So the American Heart Association wants you to learn the benefits of sleep. It can heal and repair cells, tissues, and blood vessels, strengthen the immune system, improve mood and energy, creates better brain function, including alertness, decision-making, focus, learning, memory, reasoning, and problem solving, and it's a less risk of chronic disease. So I will put the link to this flyer that shows you the 8 tips for success and some other resources for you in the show notes. Until next time, be well and take good care of yourself, and don't forget to breathe.